All right, let's dive right into this explainer of Stendhal's 1830 masterpiece, The Red and the Black. We're looking at a novel that operates brilliantly as a high-stakes game of social mobility. I mean, if you thought hustle culture was some sort of modern invention, diving into the works of Henri Beyle, better known by his pen name Stendhal, reveals a picture of post-Napoleonic France that is just completely dripping with ambition, strategy, and some incredibly heavy consequences.
Stendhal kicks off the very first volume of his story with this fierce fictional quote attributed to the French revolutionary Danton, "The truth, the harsh truth." It basically acts as a harsh mirror right from page 1, signaling that we are about to unpack the deeply flawed, hypocritical journey of a young man trying to con his way to the absolute top of a rigid, class-based society. Stendhal isn't here to give us some chivalric fairy tale, He's holding up a mirror to the absolute societal corruption of his time.
So, you might be wondering, what does a 19th century French novel actually have in common with modern dating and hustle culture? Well, at its core, this story is all about using romance, calculated personas, and pure emotional manipulation as tools for relentless ambition. Our protagonist, Julien Sorel, doesn't just want to find love or get a stable job. No, he wants to conquer a world that was explicitly designed to keep him at the bottom.
To understand exactly how he does this, let's define the rules of Julien's world by looking at the title's central metaphor, the red versus the black. See, Julien is a working-class carpenter's son who intensely idolizes Napoleon Bonaparte and dreams of military glory. That's the red, representing passion, blood, and the army. But in the post-Napoleonic era, specifically the conservative Bourbon Restoration, that path is totally blocked for a commoner. Instead, the only viable path to power and wealth is the black, the Catholic clergy, representing cold calculation in the new conservative order. Julien realizes he has to play the game in black, even if his heart beats fiercely in red.
And this clash between passion and calculation brilliantly sets up our chaotic love triangle, showing exactly how their distinct motivations just completely collide. We've got Julien Sorel, a working-class plebeian motivated purely by social climbing and ambition. Then there's Madame de Renal, the provincial mayor's wife, motivated by genuine, albeit incredibly guilt-ridden love. And finally, Mathilde de la Mole, a Parisian aristocrat whose primary motivation is intellectual thrill and basically just escaping her sheer aristocratic boredom. Love for Julien becomes both a tool to manipulate and a trap that ultimately snares him.
If we look at the timeline across the 1820s, you can see how this builds into an aggressive ladder of social climbing. He starts as a carpenter's son in 1815, leverages his intellect to become a tutor in the early 20s, pivots into becoming a seminary student, leaps to Paris to work as a marquis secretary, and finally, miraculously, achieves his ultimate dream of becoming a lieutenant in 1830. It is literally a masterclass in strategic, highly deceptive career advancement.
Moving into Part 1, The Provinces and the Mayor's Wife. Here in the provinces of Verrières, Julien begins his ascent by securing a job tutoring the wealthy local mayor's children. Now, despite his absolute contempt for the wealthy elites he's serving, Julien sees seducing the mayor's wife, Madame de Renal, not out of passion at first, but purely as a duty to assert his own superiority. It's his dark way of dominating the upper class. But, of course, his own passionate, red nature gets the better of him, and they fall into a very intense secret affair. When rumors of this affair start threatening a massive scandal, Julien is forced to pivot, so he gets sent away to a Catholic seminary in Besançon. And man, at the seminary, his strategy just goes into overdrive. He memorizes the entire Latin Bible, essentially word for word, strictly to impress the local elite. He feigns absolute piety despite lacking any genuine religious faith whatsoever. He basically learns to completely weaponize hypocrisy. And it works. His immense intellect and calculated demeanor attract the attention of the seminary director, Abbé Pirard, who ends up becoming his powerful protector.
And that brings us to Part 2, Conquering Parisian High Society. That powerful protection propels Julien right to Paris. Abbé Pirard secures him a highly coveted job as the personal secretary to the ultra-conservative Marquis de la Mole. Julien is thrust right into the epicenter of the French elite. And his reaction is so fascinating. He is simultaneously enthralled by their sophistication, yet completely repulsed by how cynical and materialistic the aristocracy truly is. They treat him like an uncouth inferior, but his exceptionally sharp mind ends up catching the eye of someone very important.
That someone happens to be the Marquis's highly dramatic daughter, Mathilde. Honestly, their relationship is a wild sequence of emotional manipulation straight out of a modern toxic dating playbook. It starts with intellectual seduction and a shared love for drama, which is immediately met with haughty, devastating rejections from Mathilde, who absolutely hates that she's attracted to a commoner. So Julien counters by playing a cynical game of love. He uses fake letters meant for another woman just to provoke Mathilde's jealousy, and it works a little too well, eventually resulting in a highly scandalous pregnancy.
Because of the pregnancy, the Marquis furiously gives in, ennobles Julien, and secures him a military commission. Julien has won. He's achieved his ultimate dream. But just as he hits the top, everything comes crashing down in a rapid-fire, true crime sequence. First, we have the damning letter. Madame de Renal, influenced by her guilt-tripping confessor, exposes Julien as a fortune-hunting predator, and the Marquis immediately cancels the wedding. Second, the shooting. Julien sees his entire life's work destroyed in an instant, snaps, drives straight back to the provinces, and shoots Madame de Renal right in the middle of church mass. And finally, the execution. Though she survives, Julien categorically refuses to apologize to a hypocritical society, which leads straight to his sentence at the guillotine.
The aftermath of his execution is just legendary. Modern readers discussing the book over on the Hemingway List subreddit absolutely love the dark satire of this ending. As one user pointed out, Mathilde building an elaborate shrine and literally keeping Julien's severed head is just perfectly true to her character. She buries his head herself. It fits her flair for over-the-top historical romance so precisely. She finally gets to play the ultimate tragic heroine, completely satisfied with the macabre drama of the whole thing.
And as for Madame de Renal, well, she visits him in prison, they deeply reconcile, but then she literally dies of grief shortly after his execution. Now, while some readers feel this is pure melodrama, it's fascinating to discover it actually has a real medical basis. Another Reddit user pointed out that traumatic life events can indeed cause what's known as broken heart syndrome, or Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. So her sudden death while holding her children becomes a tragic but medically plausible end for someone whose entire life was consumed by this intense, guilt-ridden love.
This ultimate demise sparks a pretty polarizing debate among readers today. Is Julien just a ridiculously awful sociopath who manipulates women and shoots his ex-lover, or is he a highly sympathetic victim of a rigidly hypocritical society? Stendhal pulls off an incredible trick here. He forces us to view Julien clearly, with all his glaring flaws and twisted logic, yet we still find ourselves feeling immense compassion for him. We see the profound pain of a brilliant guy trapped in a class system that was entirely rigged against him from the very day he was born. So, the big takeaway here is that this explainer tracks what literary critics call a classic Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age story, but Stendhal ruthlessly twists the knife on us. Instead of a triumphant, mature integration into the adult world, Julien chooses the guillotine over bowing down to a society he fundamentally despises, which leaves us with a provocative final question to ponder. Did Julien Sorel actually grow up and find his true, authentic self in those final days in prison, or did a hypocritical society simply break him before he ever really had the chance?